This episode of We Are Libertarians is brought to you by Audible.com. Enjoy one free audiobook courtesy of We Are Libertarians. Choose from more than 100,000 audiobook titles, including works by Ron Paul, Walter Block, Murray Rothbard, and the Cato Institute. Audible.com also has audio of radio and TV programs and audio versions of magazines and newspapers. You can get the Audible app on any mobile device or download the audio to your computer. Go to audibletrial.com/WAL or head to WeareLibertarians.com and find the link to get one free month of Audible today.
Shorty, get down, grab your keyboard. Got a website you must see now. For libertarian viewpoints, this is your joy. Turn the Fox News down. Commentary is a forte, each and every day. True play away. I can't get it out of my mind. I think about the podcast all the time. A national to the state news. Trust these dudes, it's really, really cool. Spangle, Harrington, and Gold, it's not their fault. Government be acting like some fools. Greg Benson, Joe Ruiz got some entertaining things for you to read. Oh, baby, it's a perfect 10. If you wanna get in, better read now so you can win. Oh, we are libertarians. No diggity. You gotta look it up. Oh, we are libertarians. No diggity. You gotta look it up. Oh, we are libertarians. No diggity. You gotta look it up. Oh, we are libertarians. No diggity. You gotta look it up.
Welcome to We Are Libertarians. This week, I am Chris Spangle, your infamous host. This is our famous host, Greg Lenz.
Hello, everybody.
And our other co-host, Creighton Harrington.
Axel Harrington.
Axel Harrington. If you watch the video on YouTube, you can see Creighton in his Zeppelin shirt and his sunglasses. He looks like a goose from... What is that movie?
Top Gun.
Yeah, Creighton was serenading us before the show with his mad guitar
I played
skills.
Master of Puppets
So-
on the acoustic.
We'll post the video later. The hit was the Mario Brothers theme.
I'm not sure that counts as serenading.
Now that voice you hear is Lynn Swayze. Lynn, how are you doing?
I'm all right. I'm here. I made it.
I know. Lynn is a new contributor to We Are Libertarians. She wrote a couple pieces. She writes like 3 or 4 articles a day for the news site. It's awesome.
Thank you.
I suck.
I know. If you go, the whole idea of We Are Libertarians was so when we posted blogs, Creighton, Galt, myself, and then we added Lynn's and Joe Ruiz. Like, hey, we'll just post something every once in a while.
Yeah, I think they expected me to do all the filler on the website.
Right.
Which totally, the website did the opposite. It made me write
I know.
less.
It just made you write less. And you look, and like none of the posts on the commentary section are
I
from
do.
any of the...
I argued with Democracy Guy.
You are the perfect example of why we shouldn't increase welfare benefits. As soon as you got extra help, you just shut it down completely.
It's because I get to talk about it more, and it's just like, well, this is the podcast.
Somebody already covered it. I'm good.
If you look at the commentary section, it's none of the original contributors. It's Lynn. It's our new contributors, Daniel Peffers, who will be on a podcast soon. It's Ken Narr.
Peffers.
It's Lynn Swayze, Paul Gable, Phyllis Kozinski. And so my message is to the originals, do more work. Except for Greg, because Greg writes stuff every day.
Greg's not an original.
Greg, yes.
I'm not an original.
Nope.
Nope. I'm the Republican
We're
scumbag.
a dying breed, man.
I know.
We're a dying breed.
The original cast of We Are Libertarians is shrinking.
The trifecta of awesomeness. Well, the trifecta of something.
Yeah, I wouldn't say awesome.
2 legs of the tripod were solid. Let's just go with that.
We do need to mention something because we had the Young Americans for Liberty conference here in Indianapolis this past weekend. So the Indiana conference we did. Chris Galt was there, and we
That was fun.
That's totally what it is.
We should preface it with we love Chris Galt dearly. We are still having our artistic differences.
A lover's quarrel.
But he did come up and say that, you know, if you were listening a couple episodes back and he talked about how they had taken over student government for concealed carry, and then I
Which they
mentioned...
haven't done yet.
I hope nobody on campus who's a liberal heard you say that. And he goes, so funny story about that. We walked into student government and they were playing the podcast on that part, and they're taking...
We have listeners!
They were playing it, and so now there's a campaign against me on campus because I'm an extremist because of the We're Libertarians podcast.
I never feel more terrorist-like than when I walk in this place.
Well, good, because it's clearly bugged. I always say, like, people always joke about how they're on the list. I'm like, no, I'm on a list, and it's not because of the Libertarian Party. It's because my next door neighbor at my mom's house, when I was still living with my mom, don't judge. Yes, lest you be judged. Everybody's 3 paychecks away from living in their mom's basement, let's face it. He came up to me one day when I got home from work, and he walked up and he said, "Hey, man, I just want to say I'm sorry about something." And I said, "What?" "I might have turned you into the Secret Service." I said, "What?" He goes, "Yeah, my sister doesn't really like me, and she got an email forward for me where I said we should take Obama out, and she turned me into the Secret Service saying that I was threatening the president. So they came here and they confiscated all of my guns, all of my computers, and they were here for 5 days questioning me. And one of the questions was, do you know anybody who wants to overthrow the government?" And
my.
And I said,
He should have responded with Obama.
yeah. He said, "Well, the neighbor kid does do some sort of job like that. I think it's with the Libertarians or something."
Oh, my God.
I luckily have never been stopped in an airport, but ever since then, I'm like, oh, I'm on a list somewhere. So
Do I know him? You don't have to say
no. I don't think he lives there anymore, so everything's safe. But I never heard another peep from him, and it's a great story to tell now.
Oh, yeah.
Cool story, bro.
Thanks, buddy.
And then I found $5.
So give the microphone over to Lynn. And Lynn, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself? Tell us, why are you a libertarian? From what background did you come, and what you do for a living, and a little bit about yourself, and all that good stuff. So how did you come to the libertarian philosophy?
It was a UPY ethics class. Mm-hmm. Read John Stuart Mill. I was just like, oh my God, like, this is awesome.
Right.
The idea of, I won't say the idea of liberty, that sounds stupid.
That's okay. We tried to sound stupid most of the show.
Trust me, you're in good company.
You're in good company.
I like liberty, so I'm a libertarian. Like, that just sounds vague. Basically, it was John Stuart Mill, and just kind of got in more from there. I know you were involved with IUPUI at the time,
right.
And I don't even know... I don't know if that was YL.
It was College Republicans. Way to bring up my past. Thanks.
Apparently you weren't cool enough.
YL didn't exist back then. I was a dirty, dirty, horrifying Republican.
And there was something libertarian that you were doing then.
Yeah, it was
like
Andy Horning's campaign. Yeah,
okay.
Andy Horning's campaign. They tried to impeach me because I didn't care about gay marriage. So they requested the bylaws to see the impeachment processes.
Are you serious?
Yeah. So apparently I didn't make it very far in the Republican Party.
Or you disagreed with them?
I disagreed with the Republicans, and I kind of don't care.
Okay.
It's like, whatever.
Right. So you read John Stuart Mill and
on Liberty, I assume.
On
Yes.
Liberty.
Apparently, I was the only one who could get through it.
Good
'cause
choice. Good choice.
Awful. Like, he doesn't know how to use a period or a semicolon or, a line break.
Utilitarian.
So before
Yes.
that, were you a Democrat, Republican? What was your philosophy?
Oh, God. I was raised Baptist, like Southern Baptist, like Bob Jones University. I spent a couple summers at the Wilds,
Like bun in the hair and the skirt Baptist?
Like-
or
Yes, although my church didn't go that far.
Like talk
Okay.
to snakes? Or is that
No, that's
Pentecostal?
or apostolic or something.
Right.
No, it was more
I can
like
do that.
drums are bad
Wait.
and things like that.
You had a very religious upbringing. So did you
Yes.
go wild in college? And you
Oh,
just
no.
started reading libertarian stuff and you're just freeing everything?
Yeah.
Wow,
pretty
that
much.
is.
That's
I
how
hope no one
wild
comes
I-
into that sentence halfway through.
That's about as wild as I get. I tell people that I'm like the black sheep of my family. My brother
Right.
went to West Point, and yeah. And I'm like the black. They're like, "What'd you do?" I'm like, "I don't know. I'm a libertarian."
How did you end up on a podcast?
My brother's probably like, "No, why is she using the name?"
So once you kind of break out into the world, did you? Because we actually Hannah Drazic we had on. She was a Republican, a conservative girl that we had on the podcast.
Didn't we
She,
discover
too,
that she was mostly libertarian?
She that's
She was one
right.
who had the couple issues that she just wouldn't sway,
Right.
like the drugs and whatnot, that she just refused to sway from. Right?
Very strong Baptist upbringing. She too is breaking out into the world and discovering that she's leaning more libertarian than conservative.
Because
so
she
was it
has
that?
But she doesn't
working
want to-
brain.
But she doesn't want to leave the Conservative Party, though.
No.
She was still very much...
That's because she's not as cool as you. So you kind of break out into the adult world and you choose which party?
Really was no party. I leaned liberal, really like liberal, libertarian, mostly for the social issues. I am bi, so I was like, well, libertarians aren't really outspoken about that. I just kind of fell into the whole liberal scene, and I'm like, nah, I really am a libertarian. I really do think that if we change things socially rather than the government just, hammering down on you, that we could do
So
a lot more
what
good.
are some of the hang-ups that you have with libertarianism or have had? That we can start working on you to destroy. It's like with Greg. Give the mic to Greg.
Greg is our best success story.
Like, Greg is our greatest success story. We invite Greg. Like, scumbag Lens comes on the podcast as the token Republican and ends up writing a piece about how great the Libertarian Party is.
Well, I mean, I wrote about...
I read it. It wasn't just about the open.
No,
I know.
but like I've always had these
Ideas.
beliefs, but I was like you. I didn't fit in with the Republicans.
Right.
I didn't want to go to Thursday night youth or Bible study. It just
Right.
wasn't me. But I still don't want the same end point that almost every libertarian does. Like I support a little bit bigger government than most.
I almost
Put
said
it up.
Practical. Sorry. I know. I talk like a girl, like a 12-year-old. So
That's
it's awful. In my head, I'm like, oh, yeah, I'm an adult and I'm sophisticated. And then I'm like, in real life, I'm like 4'10". It sounds like I'm 12. It's awful.
That's okay.
It's so cute. No.
Oh, I wondered why I wanted to put you on my shelf. So you wouldn't say that you're an anarchist. You
Oh,
wouldn't.
no.
What
I
are
think
some-
people are too... I don't say too stupid. That's bad. I'm not sure that, as an optimist, I would like to say, yeah, it's great that people can entirely self-govern as much as is ideologically possible. Is that practical? Probably not. At
Right.
least that's where I am.
That's
but
how I feel.
moving in that direction, I feel is good.
right?
Yes.
And I think that the more we move that way, the better. And I'm happy with that. So,
I personally do not believe that anarchism is viable because I think people are imperfect. I think anarchism is viable, not because I don't think it is logically sound. I believe it's the only logically sound societal makeup. I just don't think people.
You just
will
don't
ever do
think
it.
you don't think people can handle it.
People
Right.
suck.
But don't you think that you live in a world where we've had 100 years of basically socialist thought being crammed down our throats, and that's why people can't handle it? Is
No,
because
I
they've
just-
been so conditioned.
No. People just throughout time they congregate into groups, and that's just how people are.
Right.
that's
And, I mean, you can have that under an anarcho-capitalist society. Don't get me wrong, but the thing is people like leadership, and they will always follow someone who tells them something stupid and say, "Let's hurt these people," and they will follow them willingly. Just that's how people are. That's how the first government started. It was just everybody back before in the caveman days. Everything was anarcho-capitalist, and the state emerged. How?
Yeah.
Why?
Right.
But there's a great line about that is as idealism emerges, the costs become prohibitive. And like that's so true for me. Like the anarchism appeals to me when you throw in the fact that there would be privately administered justice with competition for that, but anything after that I am just done. I'm
Right.
completely done.
No private post office?
No, yeah. I mean like
Who will educate the roads?
Who will build the roads?
Now, Lynn, what are some of the hang-ups when you hear libertarians talk? You just go, I don't get that. I mean, I've always said that at the beginning, 4, 5, 6 years ago, for me it was guns. I was like, I've never shot a gun. I have never grown up around guns.
Have you since that?
I have not.
Oh my God!
I'm just a suburban kid.
We are
My
taking
family
you
was
to
never like a
Atterbury.
gun thing,
We're
So
taking you to Atterbury.
taking me to Atterbury.
We are taking you to Atterbury.
So what are some of your hang-ups about the libertarian thought process, the issues that we talk about, and philosophies?
I can say probably a biggest thing right now, and some of that has to do, I think, with everything that's going on with gay marriage and whatnot, is the idea that government should be out of marriage. And that's only because, one, I don't view marriage as a religious thing. That's me. I'm weird.
Right.
I'm not really all sentimental about it, and I'm sure my husband will hate me, but he's not going to listen to this anyway.
Hey, your husband's like my wife.
No, I'm very practical about it. Marriage confers, benefits to me that I wouldn't have just dating him.
Well, there are 1,100 specific benefits
Right.
that you get when you're married.
I mean, it really depends on your situation and whatnot, but just makes a lot of things, at least in this society, it makes a lot of things easier. And so for me, I see it as a contract more than a religious thing. So I don't quite understand why people say the government should be out of it, other than the government should say, okay, you make a contract like this and it can uphold fully. That I support, but
See, the thing
to make
is
it only...
if they do that, if they were to operate upon that, and I think that's something that's supposed to come up in the Supreme Court, maybe, I'm not sure.
Right.
If they were to operate upon the idea of that it's just two people contracting their assets to own and joint, then they have to enforce it by constitutional law. I think the way I always look at it is if we're gonna if the state's supposed to enforce contracts, then the state gets involved in the contract whenever it needs enforcing. But to define what is a valid contract, as far as people just owning something in joint, I think is where the mix-up is. It's just, two people want to take their assets and join them together and own stuff together. That's under, as far as the government is concerned, that's all really marriage is. I mean, they get some benefits, as like you can visit them in hospitals, but those are regulations that should be removed. It shouldn't be up to the government to define who gets to visit someone in a hospital.
Well, let's frame the issue and hand the mic over to Greg. Because Greg is always the person that sets up all the information. He's the guy who reads the newspaper.
He does the homework.
He does the homework for us. So we really ask him to kind of explain everything. He is a nerd.
He's out-nerded me.
Very nerdy.
I must up
So
my nerdness.
let's talk about what's gone on this week. The hot topic of the week, if you've been on Facebook for any period of time, you're floating in a sea of red.
Yeah, red and white, vaguely white bars.
It's ironic that it's happening during Passover. Because
It is.
everyone was smeared above their Facebook page. So, anyways, so this week the Supreme Court heard about Prop 8 and about DOMA. So let's talk about what Prop 8 is. Can you tell us what Proposition 8 is, Greg?
Yeah, Proposition 8 overturned gay marriage in California. It put it up for a referendum, and they voted that they did not want it. And so it got challenged constitutionally, and that's why it's arrived at the same Supreme Court. But they essentially overturned gay marriage.
Now, the very next day, they heard about the Defense of Marriage Act, DOMA, and tell us a little bit about that.
DOMA was passed in 1996, and I don't know how in-depth you want me to be, because I read a lot about it, and it is a colossally bad government overreach.
Go for it.
The reason it's so bad is it was passed in 96. Let me give you a little background on it. It's Bob Barr, former Libertarian presidential nominee, introduced...
Everyone loves Bob Barr.
And he is expected to announce his congressional race for Congress at some point in the next couple days.
And he introduced the bill, and then it was passed under Newt Gingrich's speakership, who at the time was having an affair. And it was signed by Bill Clinton, who at the time was having an affair. And then the head of the committee at the time, his name was Henry Hyde.
Henry Hyde, yes.
Henry Hyde, who was the one who actually led impeachment proceedings against Bill Clinton for
having an affair.
for having an affair and lying. He was the one who said, same-sex marriage, if sanctified by law, if approved by law, legitimates a public union, a legal status that most people feel ought to be illegitimate, and in doing so trivializes the legitimate status of marriage and demeans it by putting a stamp of approval on a union that many people think is immoral. How did that language get in a bill? Ever.
Right.
Ever.
Because they were worried about some intern in the White House or something.
Right.
Well, he had an affair in the 60s with a woman that was married, and he wasn't at the time. And then he goes around parading himself around as some beacon
Some great moral leader, yeah.
I mean, it is just, I have no idea what the bill even meant when you take into account the credibility of the people who proposed it and signed it.
Dan Burton was one of the people who here in Indiana who led the impeachment trials.
Oh.
And Dan is a well-known, maybe not so much anymore, but back in the day, Dan did a lot of damage around the town.
Oh, yeah. There are many. He's like the Genghis Khan of Indianapolis. Half of the population of Indy has Dan Burton
Has been
DNA.
sired by Dan Burton.
Yeah. No.
Allegedly. Let's just say that before I get sued.
He's
I've met two.
So
on We Are Libertarians, are we calling Dan Burton allegedly Asian?
yes. So DOMA is essentially the definition that the federal government recognizes marriage as between a man and a woman, and that the federal government will not recognize same-sex marriages.
But that's the thing, though. That's not exactly what it is. If you read H.R. 3396, the title of the bill is, one of the subtitles of it is "Advances the Government's Interest in Defending Traditional Notions of Morality." Okay. That is offensive. And then you go down even further, and this is what Kagan brought up yesterday in the arguments, this is included in the language of the bill. Congress decided to reflect in honor of collective moral judgment and to express moral disapproval of homosexuality.
Wow. So it's on congressional records that they disprove
of homosexuality.
Okay.
Because I didn't really... Yeah, like, I wasn't real fired up.
Which explains why social conservatism dies hard.
Oh, every time.
Right.
I mean, it is... And then, look who passed the friggin' bill? Clinton and Gingrich.
Right.
Are you kidding me?
Gingrich is on wife number 4.
Yeah, his wife's dying with cancer, and he's flirting with the nurse.
What was the meme that went around during the election? Family values is telling everyone that your third wife lied about your second wife and something with your first wife.
Exactly.
So let's start with Lynn's perspective on DOMA and on Proposition 8 as someone who is a member of the LGBT community. Mm-hmm. What is the general consensus? I mean, as if we don't all know, but what is your opinion of these acts, and what is the broader opinion from the LGBT community?
Well, the entire LGBT community goes, a little bit farther than I would. My views on Prop 8 are different than on DOMA. On Proposition 8, that's a state saying, hey, this is what we want marriage to be. I think eventually most states will go to accepting gay marriage. It's just going to be there. So on Prop 8, let it stand. Let the people say what they want. Yeah.
Right.
Like last year, affirmed slavery, though.
Mississippi just finally amended the Constitution to say slavery is illegal.
The 13th Amendment.
Are you serious?
Finally said that slavery is illegal.
And it's all because of Steven Spielberg.
Right.
Don't ever let them say Hollywood doesn't make politicians realize how dumb they've been.
So
we look bad.
Proposition 8 is a referendum where people, where the voters have said that they want their state to recognize marriage as between a man and a woman, which is surprising for California. But if you watch on Netflix the Prop 8 documentary about the Mormon Church's influence and the amount of money that was spent in Prop 8.
Well, if you have a lot of people voting who would never have voted otherwise, you're going to get numbers that you wouldn't have expected because you have people caring.
To tell you what I think is that I think it has a lot to do with the massive Hispanic community there.
I agree. Yeah. I agree. It's very conservative.
Because Hispanics, demographically are usually Catholic,
right?
And that probably was probably a nail in the coffin for it. Was all of the Hispanic community there, and they didn't jive well with them.
Go on.
Awkward silence.
Yeah, that's okay.
Most of the LGBT community obviously wants to see Prop 8 overturned. Wants to see, gay marriage being accepted in California. Now, does the domestic partnership laws in California still stand?
I would assume so,
well?
Yeah.
That confers most rights except for some of the federal and tax benefits and whatnot. So there is something in California.
The case is a lady from California, right?
What is the stipulations with common law marriages?
A common law marriage.
That's different from a domestic partnership.
Yeah,
though.
Here's sort of the breakdown. The common law marriage is if you were living with a young lady and you two had all of your...
you live with someone for 7 years and you're common law married.
It's just basically...
It doesn't exist in Indiana anymore.
Right. So it basically is just a default.
1200s or something.
Right. It really, that's true, because people who just sort of fell into a relationship where they were married, they put all their stuff together, after a certain period of time, they just were recognized as married.
Now, does that work between same sex, though?
No.
Okay.
It is, unless it is the state recognize it as such. So
I thought common law was different than state or federal constitutional.
No, because we're at a point where up until roughly the 1920s, marriage was a religious institution, and marriage was, and for those who weren't religious, common law marriage applied. So if you didn't go to a religious institution to get married, or you didn't go to a justice of the peace, you just were married, you never got a piece of paper, you just had all the legal benefits over time.
No, I know.
And then over in the 1920s, that's when we really started to develop the licensing of marriage to keep blacks Filipinos, Hispanics, whites, and any races from mixing whatsoever.
No,
that's where the history of marriage licensing
No, I know.
comes from.
I think that's what I think is kind of ironic, is because honestly, we are libertarians viewers. This is not one of my hot button issues. So I will just come out and say it. I mean, so my answer as far as a libertarian perspective would be to get the government out of the situation. So I just find it ironic with the history of marriage licenses as to how it was supposed to. The only reason they even introduced them was to be bigoted. Now
that's the point.
That now it's been turned around to, oh well, we need these historically bigoted licensing laws to not be bigoted anymore. When before that it was just, it was totally
right. And so the argument is from a libertarian perspective. I totally agree with you. I say, what is the point of having, from a libertarian perspective, I would say the vast majority of libertarians would agree that we believe in individualism, that the individual is the key foundation of society, that I am the person who governs myself. I am not the person who governs Creighton or Lynn or Greg.
He tries to.
I try so hard. One day I will take power. But as for now, I can only govern myself, and I can only outline the things that are important to me. And the government and other outside forces should not be allowed to interfere in my progress towards the life, liberty, property, and happiness. And right now, the government has inserted themselves into the marriage business and does not allow an equal access to the law for a minority of our citizens. And I don't look at the, James Neese always talks about how libertarians love to talk about liberty, but equality and justice are just as important components of what libertarians ought to be talking about. Mm-hmm. And this is an equality and justice issue. And, we should allow, until we can change and roll back the entire perception of most of our country that you're an individual, you shouldn't control the lives of others, you shouldn't control their big gulp intake, their health care, their marriage habits. Until we can roll that back, we should make sure that everyone is treated equally and applied evenly.
It's equality under the law. I mean, that goes back. I mean, that's one of the things that separated America from other countries when it was founded, was that it was going to treat everyone equal under the law, except
the slaves
at the time,
right?
But and women. I mean,
Indians.
the spirit,
non-property owners.
No, don't. You know what I mean, though.
Non-Puritans.
Yes,
the Catholics.
The spirit of it was
Irish.
that the idea they were going with was that if you were a king, if you were a nobleman, if you were rich, if you were poor, yes, at that time you had to be a property-owning white male for it to apply. But
the spirit, Congregationalist church, right?
The spirit of it was that
it was an improvement.
Yes,
right.
Now, of course, as time has gone on, we have realized that it's it's a logical fallacy to say, well, women don't get this. What? That doesn't make any sense. Of course, so we've extended it, and I understand what you're saying. Extend it to homosexuals as well, and I agree. I think that it's gone back to it's a traditional thing. America has been built on this idea of equality under the law. Justice is blind, and I would agree that any law or policy we have that does not treat any group as equal, that hasn't committed a crime, it is unjust. But at the same time, I just grapple with the idea of just, making the government bigger.
Well, the thing is...
But hold on. They're not making the government bigger. They're just allowing people access to the laws that already exist. They're not passing a law.
But I know that when this is done, that it's going to look... everyone's going to look at it as this great advancement of, civil rights and stuff.
Something that should have been anyway.
Yeah, and I just look at it like people are going to look at this as the success, when I think the real success is getting government out of the way. And I know it's one of those, practicality versus idealism things. And maybe I'm being more of the idealist because it's just not one of my hot button issues, but I don't know. That's just kind of how I look at it.
This war was fought in the 1960s by the Republican Party. There was a huge strain of Republicans that were pro-civil rights, but they wanted it to be done within the institutions that existed. They didn't want the government to come in and overreach. every single one of them to this day talks about how wrong they were for not going ahead and having a government intrusion and abiding by federalism. Every single one that wrote about it, supported it then, said how wrong they were and what damage they did to the party. Because they did polling in the 70s, and what they found was it wasn't the policies that African Americans were turned off about Republicans. It was that the party was full of old white guys that hated them.
No, I got you. No, I totally. I agree that perception, the message of, saying the government should have it is not necessarily the message that sells well. And usually I'm the guy that says message right. And I guess I agree. As far as if you're going to ask me what I think is viable today, now, in our current climate, I would say allowing gay marriage through government involvement. I would say that is the most practical option. But that being said, I think that on a more fundamental level, people should at least keep it in the back of their mind that why was the government even involved in the first place?
Sure, and I think you're making the argument, just so people are clear, you're not saying that you're anti-gay marriage. You're just saying, why are we advocating for more government or asking the state to save us?
Marriage is a personal issue. I mean, people wanting to be together for any reason it's an incredibly personal issue, and we're bringing this. We're bringing the collective into it. When it's kind of just I don't know. It strikes me as kind of contradictory, I guess. Maybe.
No, I totally get it, but there are certain things that federalism doesn't work for, and this is one of them. Having 50 different state laws on who gets to be recognized and who doesn't, you will never. It may be 300 years. Everyone has similar policy.
Maya and I talked on The Uncontrollables this week about that. That's her show on Indiana Talks. We're heard on Indiana Talks too. Go to creatingmaya.com if you want to hear that show. But we talked about this issue. And I asked, I said, all right, so you're transgender and you're in a relationship with a woman. And currently your legal status, your legal marker is male, but eventually it will be female according to various state laws have various, her point was, why should I have to ask the state, for what I am anyways? I just am. I'm just free. Why do I have to ask permission to choose a gender? And secondly, why do I have to ask permission from the government to quantify what Emily and I have? And so my question was, if you live in a progressive state like a Massachusetts or a New Hampshire, what happens when you move to an Indiana or an Oklahoma? What will they recognize your relationship? No, probably not. So should the state be allowed to choose that, or should the government force that state to recognize what they have as a relationship?
I'm 100% behind force. I think this is one of those issues. I don't care. Big government come in, intrude, label it civil union, label it marriage. Yeah. I talked last night about if you want to have a checkbox on there that says, no, this is a marriage, do it, but it has to have a notarized certificate from a religious institution. That's fine. But this, to me, is one of those things. If it never gets done unless there is one huge overbearing policy.
So what about... You could make the argument, though, that I think they've done studies that gay couples, women or male, are... Don't they on net? Are they more productive?
Yeah,
they're more productive. They make more money.
So and the children are now. We're finding out the children perform better.
So you could argue that having that.
Yeah, because you have people who are pretty much told they are awful and worthless and aren't good as they are going to create an environment that, one, wants to prove that they're not awful, worthless human beings. Two, they're not going to foster that in their kids. They're not going to tell their kids that they're awful. They're going to be supportive of their kids because they don't want to go through the same thing that they did when they were children.
Right.
They're going to be more deliberate.
But I'd say also the percentage of people within that particular community have less kids than
absolutely
than the breeders, as our friend Evan likes to call them. I mean, and you're the only person out of the four of us who has kids. What do they do to your productivity?
Oh my God.
You're like, I was able to brush my teeth today. That's what I got done. So
I'm writing this article on my iPhone.
Well, my point though, and I guess I will say I'm playing devil's advocate here. My point is that I think you could argue that there would be an incentive for states to uniformly allow it over time because if they are more productive, then they're not going to move to states that are are saying they aren't recognized as married couples. And those states realizing that this is the case would be more incentivized to recognize them, because then they could get these more productive people of society
but you know
to move
what?
to their state.
I think I disagree with Greg. I think that if Oklahoma wants to never allow gay marriage, then I'd find that offensive and I'd never move to Oklahoma. I mean...
But there are people who are born in Oklahoma who may, their children, they always lived in Oklahoma.
That's a fair argument.
Kids are born in Oklahoma. I don't know what else you do in Oklahoma.
To play the other devil's advocate.
To play the angel's advocate.
To play the other devil's advocate, you could say that what if they got the job opportunity of their life in Oklahoma or something, and they wanted to move there because they would have a better life, but they wouldn't be recognized as a married couple.
I don't see how you can ever support equality only existing until you butt up against a state border.
Right.
And you know what? I get it. You want to talk about maybe we'll get there. That's fantastic. We're there. It's time. Do it. Get it over with.
Pass a law.
Pass a law. I'm on board. I'll support you.
If you're asking me if I sway more towards Greg or more towards states, I would swing more towards Greg. Mm-hmm. Honestly.
I don't know. It's an interesting question, and we'd love to hear your feedback. Because honestly, it's not something that I've thought about. But when I think of the 50 different laboratories of Republican democracy,
Gary Johnson,
Democratic republics, I don't know what the answer is, because I understand how. I mean, it's just not right to force other people to impose your values using the government on other people. But at the same time, I don't like federalism. So I think maybe we'll put up a poll on Facebook and have people comment and vote on Facebook. So go to facebook.com/We're Libertarians and vote in the poll. And let's hear your thoughts on it.
I do have one little quick thing to add, though. If you adopt like the federalist policy, what you're going to ultimately end up having are states where people go to who align with their views. So you're going to get harder and harder views in those states. Like Texas, people are going to go there. It's conservative. They want conservative social policy. I'll go there. I can't wait. The economy's great.
Right.
It will not improve from that point unless there certain things just have to be a mandate.
But aren't you arguing for DOMA on the other side, though? I mean,
no. But listen, again, if you just follow the Constitution, it says all contracts must be followed. So somewhere along the line, there is something that is just recognizing this contract between two guys or two girls rather than a guy and a girl as invalid. And I don't know if these laws address that. I think the solution could possibly just be, two people say we are going to live together and we are contracting our assets in joint. If that is the contract, then the federal government, by constitutional law, has to follow it. I mean, that's part of the Constitution.
I think if I were designing a marriage system, all right, let me give you the Chris Spangle marriage system. Okay, it would essentially involve
fake wives.
It would seriously involve fake wives like mine. It would involve no government.
And every Friday set aside, and we're watching football and basketball, and no one can bother us.
Essentially, every marriage would have to have a prenup.
Right.
Where, the government does not exist to create contracts. I think that, when I get married with my wife, we would start to sit down with a marriage attorney as opposed to a divorce attorney. And, someone argued with me on a Facebook thread saying, well, doesn't it just save time for the state governments to automatically write out exactly what happens when you get divorced? So when you split your assets and your kids and all this, it's taken care of for you. And I didn't get into it there, but I'll get into it here. I would argue that no, because what if I disagree with what the state has written? I'm forced to adopt what they have.
The state already has, like for me, I'm divorced with 2 kids from my ex-husband. The state already says, this is how the state likes to split things. This is how the state likes you to handle children. This is how, the Indiana Parenting Time Guidelines. The state already has those things. It doesn't make it any easier.
Right.
My perfect idea of a marriage would be, hey, okay, if you need like a government stamp or you need some kind of like notary sign or something, you have 2 people saying, this is what we agreed to up front. this is what we agree to be
Absolutely.
held to up front. And then when you divorce, if you still have disputes, you can go through it like any other contract.
Sure.
You
And
know.
basically what you do is you sit down before you're married, before you sign these contracts,
Like you would for business or
and
anything
you
else.
say, the two of us will do this if this happens. This is what we do if we have kids. It makes you, before you take the act, while you're still in love, while you're thinking about your life, when you get married, you just get married. You don't think
Creighton's
about...
like, ew.
So are you
You're
telling
making his
me
face
that
like,
you think that the solution should be to submit every guy who wants to get married to that awkward situation, saying, "So, honey,
No.
if we were to get divorced,
No, because...
It's awkward now, though. Like today for the girl. Girls are starting to out-earn guys. They're earning more.
No, but here's the thing. When I'm not saying that every person has to get a prenup, but the fact is most people, it would over time become a part of the culture. You sit down with your marriage attorney, you plan out your lives together, you talk about what would happen if things don't work. Right now, you don't do that when you get married. You plan the big day. You plan what the dress is going to look like.
We
You
waste
plan
a
where you're going
lot
to
of
get the catering.
government's
So what you're
money
saying-
in divorce. We
so-
waste
Right.
a lot
And-
of the government's
And
money
exactly,
in
hold on.
divorce.
So when you divorce and you break up and you're no longer a couple, then you're fighting about your assets and your kids and all the crap that you put together when you hate each other, and it becomes bitter. So instead, all you have to do is go to the court and say, "Here's a contract. Here's how we're splitting it up."
so you've basically
Already done.
got to overcome the desire for the girl to just, have that perfect wedding day," is what you're saying. That ain't gonna happen ever.
I'm not just saying that. I'm saying that part of the problem
I can't comment. I'm the anomaly. Like my first was like on my lunch hour in a courtroom, and my second one was in my mother-in-law's house. Like 6 months after I had my third son in like a Avon dress.
You're a terrible woman.
I am a terrible woman.
But I'm saying that we in our society we have a major issues with marriage, bigger than this, that impact more families than gay marriage, and they are the LGBT community are right now fighting for marriage, and they're going to take it more seriously than the breeders, because we just go off to Vegas, we get hitched on our lunch hour, and then when you get divorced, it either just sort of you just initiate the process. There's it's. And then it just gets nasty because you've never worked out your issues when you get divorced and what you're going to do with your stuff and with your kids. And you work all that out when you're at each other's throats and you hate each other and they're psychos. I mean, it just makes so much more sense to remove government altogether, have no marriage laws at all, and make everyone to go to marriage attorneys where they have boilerplate, and then you negotiate from there. It's going to make relationships stronger, and you're going
probably.
to appreciate the process more, and you're going to focus on working together and your relationship more than you're going to focus on how much you're spending on a caterer.
You know what? I would love to sit in on that conversation. Hey, honey, if we get divorced, can I keep this? Oh,
Yeah.
Well, I think it'd be more deliberate, though. I
so
think it would actually
awkward.
help marriage because you would deliberately sit down and think about, because I don't know how many people a lot of people get married to people that they shouldn't get married to.
Right.
If you actually
50%, right?
deliberately sit down and think, this is what will happen to me,
Right.
to my life, to, it might make people think. And there's a huge private and public cost to divorce that
Right.
would be avoided, especially with children. I mean, I had DRCB stuff, so I had people with the state doing that. I have a parenting coordinator that courts had to appoint. I mean, there's just,
Right.
there's,
And Greg just broke my house. I don't know how he did that, but he just
Put that anywhere, man.
just broke everything. Greg, just leave it. It's fine.
Just put that
It'll make it
anywhere.
worse.
You broke it.
Yeah. It's worse.
I have a thing that Greg just knocked off the wall with. It's
I didn't hear anything break, though.
no, nothing's broken.
It needs like
It's
glue.
trust me. I need
band.
less knicknacks around my house. So
Man, you just come over to people's houses.
he just destroys
you
everything.
break everything.
I'm the Maya.
Right. Hey, I'd like you to read that. What's in your left hand there, Greg?
All those who enter here bring pleasure. Some as they enter, others as they leave.
So let that be
On
a
the
lesson
ladder.
to you. Yeah. So I think when you go through that process, though, Creighton, and you start having those conversations, you're probably going to find out that maybe this is not a person for me to marry, or maybe this is I'm having second thoughts about this. Maybe I think it would put more of it would make people think about the consequences of divorce far more, because right now people get divorced because
50,
they've had five arguments over 3 years,
Isn't
so they
it
think it's time to move on.
50%
It's
is
well
the
over.
divorce
It's
rate?
like
At least,
almost
I'm sure.
60 at this point.
If it's
God
over
bless
50 for a
America.
first marriage, for a second it's like 67, for a third it's like in the 70s, and like,
Right.
it just goes up with every.
So once again, the We Are Libertarians crew has solved society with more freedom. Let's give ourselves a round of applause.
Yes. You used to see government has no role in promoting morality at all.
No, because morality is it's the individual's idea of morality. What I see as morality is different than what you see as morality.
Yeah.
It is decided upon by myself, my family, my community of faith, or my lack of community of faith. I mean, I'm an evangelical Christian. I'm a person of faith, but I also believe that trying to prohibit behaviors, trying to manipulate behaviors, backfires on society when you use the state. I think what we've done in this society by trying to use the government as a moral tool with things like poverty relief. When we talk about welfare, what has that done? It has created more poverty. It enslaves more people into the welfare system, and it has made churches, mosques, and synagogues lazier. People feel no responsibility to take care of the members of their community that are hungry or struggling, and even if they do care, try to figure out how to start. Because at this point, it's pretty darn hard to go out and try and solve poverty in your community because of rules. So that's why I don't think that government should have a role in promoting morality, because you either prohibit behaviors, and prohibition has not worked for alcohol, it's not worked for drugs, it doesn't work for prostitution, and promoting morality in the positive sense, like solving issues of welfare relief, that hasn't worked either.
No.
You know, it creates a system of dependence, and it robs people of their dignity.
I know the founders were really concerned with virtue, not so much morality, but virtue.
Sure.
And I feel like as we've become,
That's a the idea of, at least in that time, virtue was a philosophical idea that is much different than what it is now. And you didn't have dominionism like you have now. You know, you had Christian, quote unquote,
right,
founding fathers, but you don't have the dominionist, that thinking that evangelical Christians and the conservative right has.
Dominionism is using the state to promote moral thinking, essentially. Yeah. Think of Pat Robertson. Dominionism.
They were adamantly opposed to all that. I mean,
right.
Everybody was opposed to the state, especially the federal government, doing anything.
So that's my concern, though, is where does it come from now? Is where do we get that as a society? With church levels at the lowest ever, with moral relativism becoming more and more accepted, I feel like the Republicans, that are opposed, the social conservatives, have this. Actually, heck, it was in Conscience of a Conservative with Barry Goldwater. It was that the teachings of God have been made clear to us, and we intend to, use society as how.
But Barry Goldwater was adamantly for gay rights.
Let's look at the issue of gay marriage, and let's just take gay marriage for instance. Okay, I think there is a direct correlation between the increase of the power of the state and the decrease of church attendance, and people's, looking at religion as a place to find a moral belief system. We now don't equate society as the collection of communities outside of government. We now equate society with what is the government going to do to fix these societal ills.
It's a culture thing. I think that's the answer to your question. Is we have over time culturally looked at government as an arbiter of morality, because we have looked at government as an arbiter of anything more than a rule of law. We have put the state on this pedestal of, I mean, how many people say it's wrong because it's illegal and it's okay because it's legal? We have built government into this entity that, just promotes whatever is legal is virtuous. And I think that's just a culture change that I think a lot of libertarians are trying to work against, recognizing that there is a separation between what is just and what is legal.
So you take the issue of gay marriage. For Christians, to be a good Christian in the majority of the Christian, the cultural Christian movement, you have to oppose gay marriage and you have to be pro-life if you're on the conservative team. If you're on the opposite team, if you're Episcopalian, for instance, or you're part of, certain sects of the mainline churches, you have to be pro-gay marriage. The fights that people have with each other when it comes to issues of homosexuality are not about, I think that you're a bad person and you think I'm a bad person and I don't think you live your right. It's never about the personal issues. What the fight is at the water cooler is that you and I don't agree on politics. And when you politicize issues like this, you start dividing people. And the evangelical church and the Republican Party, by making the issue of what people do with their private parts, has destroyed those two institutions in many ways. It has led to the decline. And if they return to individualism, where they said, I don't know where I've heard this before, if people were more concerned with the plank in their own eye than the speck in the other guy's eye, and they focused on what they did wrong and what they did right.
That would be Matthew 7.
Right, yeah. I knew I'd heard it somewhere.
Terrible Christian, isn't he?
Matthew is a book.
Yeah, I was being sarcastic. I knew that. It was Matthew 7.
It's in a Trey Parker
5.
musical.
Oh, the only Bible verse I can probably quote is the one from Pulp Fiction.
That's not even right. That doesn't. It's not even
the real verse.
No, if you look it up, it's like totally different. It's like the sheep went down to the water. It's like totally different than the movie. But what it comes down to is when you look at what needs to change in society, what needs to change in religion, what needs to change in government, usually you need to stop thinking about what other people are doing and start thinking about your own behavior and how you treat others and what you ought to be doing to change things.
Well, but if the thing is if you make that argument of like, that implies what are you doing being what are you doing anything moral or immoral, and I think a lot of people who are religious, quote, they tend to look at it as an immoral issue. I mean, right. Don't get me wrong. There are plenty of people who are Christian and completely moral that see, homosexuality is fine. They don't see anything wrong with it. Sure. But there is just as many people who are against it for moral reasons. Now, I'm not saying they're right. I personally don't care.
Right.
You can do whatever you want. But I think that I don't know. I don't know. I don't like this issue.
I have serious concerns about this system without essentially a traditional set of beliefs. Not like as far as gay marriage goes. I'm hugely in favor of that, but almost morality, because there's ever since Marx there's this trend that history is on a march to an end point. Mm-hmm. And I feel like for the longest time, the 1920s all the way up until the 1950s, quite frankly, under Nixon and Carter as well, in the United States, the march was towards more socialism.
Right.
That was where history was going. And then we've had about a period of 30 years that stood athwart history. And it kicked it back. And we got back to the individual. We got back to, a Democrat saying the era of big government's over, even though, it ultimately
it wasn't. Yeah, it was.
But I feel like
right, and then he signed DOMA.
Yeah,
the era of big government is over. Yeah. But by the way, I'm going to oppress gay people.
But for the longest time, we were headed in a direction. The Soviet Union was already going that way, and now I feel like with this system, if we just go totally moral relativism, we're going to be swayed by the benefits. We're going to be swayed by the majority, not us, not people that are principled libertarians, but the majority of people in the United States are going to be swayed by, you know what? We should have heavier taxation. Why doesn't the government own that?
Religion doesn't. Religion it factors in, but it really comes down to promoting individualism in religion and politics and within those institutions. We're now at a point where they're trying to control the food supply with Monsanto and bills like that. They're trying to corporatize the food supply, I guess, is maybe a better way to put it.
They've been doing that since the New Deal.
You look at somebody like Bloomberg. Bloomberg is probably the most influential member of the business media. He's one of the top 5 top media. Everybody who works in financials works on a Bloomberg machine. Here is a guy who is not only wanting to set up systems and control systems, but has the media component to control it. You look at what's going on in Britain. Instead of saying, well, gee, we have laws against hacking, we have laws against bad media outlets, and they worked. Gee, people are going to jail for this. Oh, let's create a panel, a ministry of media, where they now have a minister who is making sure that the media does what's right and does their job.
The censor overlord.
Yeah, you know how many members of the new media are on that? Bloggers, for instance? None. So all of these major institutions, we're now at a point where we're at two places. The internet is increasingly democratizing and breaking apart these major institutions, while at the same time they are using the financial crises and everything that's going on to try and consolidate power. And I think we're moving into a pressure cooker in a lot of ways.
I would argue that, to your point on the march of history, I would say that the thing Marx got wrong was that even before him, history always marched forward and then retract, and then march forward and then retract and then march forward and then retract. I think you could just as easily argue that, while Bloomberg's consolidating media power in New York, Hearst was doing that in the early 1900s,
1930s,
with newspapers. I mean, it's all a repetition of things that have happened
But
before.
that's not so much my concern. My concern is maybe not socialism, but like overreaching welfare liberalism of like John Rawls. Is that right now, if the Republican Party fails, what you have is a Democratic Party that and quite frankly, the Republicans haven't given them an opposition. They're Democrat light. But without any break on it at all, I see the majority swaying towards that. A continual, gradual Obamacare, another benefit. And until someone arises that just stands up and says, this isn't predestination.
Well, look at what's gone on in Cyprus. I mean, we ought to move into Cyprus now. Once we let Lynn make her point. So
isn't that?
No, I was just going to say that I agree. I think, I think a lot of people do want more socialism. They're not going to use the S word. They're not going to use that word because that's a bad word.
Welfare liberal, yeah.
Right. But what people are swayed by empathy, by emotional arguments. What you're saying, we have a lot of the internet being used for, which some of it is good, exposing crony capitalism and just, things that are just wrong, but a lot of emotional sways, I think, is what you're getting at. And
a lot of it is just that, that happens to other people. It doesn't happen to me. And I think Cyprus is a great example of that. And we'll talk a little bit about that now. Cyprus was... it's a tiny country. It's like, what is the size of Tucson? Go ahead, Creighton.
What would you call someone from Cyprus?
A Cypriot.
A
Cypriot.
Because Cyprusian sounds so much cooler.
The old word is Cypressian.
Cypressian?
Yep, and it's typically used for females.
We need to change it to Cyprusian.
Cyprusian.
That sounds so much cooler.
So we'll ask
Cyprusian.
Greg for some facts on Cyprus here in just a second because he's flicking through his little BlackBerry.
Yeah,
is it close to Greece?
It's right off the coast of Greece.
Yeah, so
it's like fairly Grecian.
There's Roman or Greek god mythology.
It's actually part Islamic too. A lot of Turkish people there. They had a huge war in the 70s.
But it's like a major banking capital where a lot of Russian oligarchs keep their money. So that's
what happens when the Swiss banks fail.
The Swiss banks are currently being threatened by the United States government to hand over anyone who has a Swiss bank account so they can check and make sure that people are paying their taxes.
They're not.
So the Swiss banks
That's what Switzerland's there for.
The Swiss banks
to have people who have guns and can't fire them, and to have banks where people don't get taxed.
It's funny you mentioned that Swiss banks because I was trying to think of what the most egregious offense towards a country was that I thought was similar, like for its citizens. Mm-hmm. And the first thing I thought of immediately was gold fillings for the Jews in Germany. I go, this is the biggest type of financial. I mean, at the time, that was just gold filling, but they are literally taking money from their citizens in order to support corporate.
Right. Wasn't there something out of one of these countries where you can no longer access your gold, or maybe the Fed even said that. That was us.
Yeah.
No, it just happened like in the last week. I'll have to find the story, but basically what happened is Cyprus is part of the European Union. The euro was a huge mistake and is breaking apart, and the Germans are now funding a ton of
Everything.
bailout, everything.
Yeah.
But
No,
America,
and you know what?
America is playing a big role in it too through the International Monetary Fund.
Yep.
And we fund that about 17%. So we all have a hand in everything that we're about to talk about. Creighton,
You know,
go ahead.
though, if we were talking about the march of history, if you look at what's happening in the European Union right now to what has happened in Germany and Europe and before World War II, and then what happened before World War I, and then what happened back when we had like people like Prussia and stuff. I mean, it's well, I mean back in like in the 1800s. I know,
Right.
But I mean, you look at what's happened. It's like uncanny. I mean, it's like Germany's back to basically funding all this stuff. It's a
Yep.
powerhouse, and it's in a position to basically take over sovereignty if it needs to.
And you know what? Cypriots are pissed about it.
Oh, this is the second time. Did you
and
guys
it's
know
the
that?
second time.
It's unbelievable.
The German citizens are seriously angry, as they should be, that their money is being used to bail out all these countries who just go on vacation for half the year. And Greece and the Cypriots and all these countries that are getting bailed out by the Germans, their press just goes out and bashes the Germans and says they're, you're
This
very
is exactly why world government.
You're
won't
very
work.
right that that there is a lot of Kaiser-esque rhetoric going on out there about Germany and what's happening.
It's just to me, I'm just looking at it from the perspective of like how all the cards are falling, and like how Germany's in this position where they are financially and almost legally, because of how the European Union is set up, in a position to be able to almost,
They're the bank of the world.
it's like
Right.
it's unbelievable.
Well,
I mean,
Europe.
It so resembles what happened before World War II.
So tell us what happened in Cyprus. Everybody's kind of heard the initial details, but what was the final result?
Just a little
of the
basic
bailout?
background is the economy's three things: shipping, tourism, and then like 50% financial services. So that's what killed it.
Because of Russian oligarchs.
Yep, and so the U.S. mortgage crisis, when it spread to Europe, unemployment went up, government unemployment expenses went up, ran deficits. Their governments, native banks had invested in all the Greek bonds, and so when Germany and Merkel cut the payout on the Greek bonds, that screwed them and caused a debt crisis there. So
Right.
they have screwed them twice now. I mean, the Cypriots have to be hating Germany, and so
What a
eventually,
bunch of screwers.
they it led them to requesting a bailout from this thing called the European Stability Mechanism. It's like a big fund of the IMF and then Germany and any country that actually even has money to put into to fund bailouts of banks. But they don't. The EU right now doesn't want to fund Cyprus because they see it as moral hazard, because they have Greece,
Sure.
or I'm sorry, they have Italy, Spain, and France. All are right on the edge of a debt crisis.
Ireland too, right?
Ireland's okay. They're
Spain?
okay. Spain is in serious trouble.
Ireland had a bailout. Spain has had a bailout. Portugal has had a bailout.
And Italy is in awful shape. And
Yeah.
so,
You know what?
Always been an awful shit.
yeah.
Italy's always It's so.
I mean, this is so.
so what they
Think,
essentially
think about it for a second. Take a step back and take a step and go above the timeline and just look at what's going on. It's like this is going to be, it's going to be world shattering. I mean, what's happening in the European Union right now is going to have its own unit in the history books when people are taking classes. I mean, this has the potential to devolve into another world conflict. I mean, it really does.
Let's also take a look at. So in Cyprus, how much did they take out of everybody's bank accounts?
Well, they balked on that deal, so there was a new deal done late last night. And what it is anyone with over $130,000 in a bank account is now going to lose 30 to 40% of that to secure $5.2 billion. They're getting the remainder to recapitalize the bank from this fund.
I ain't going to Cyprus.
Yeah, and here's the thing, though. Cyprus, 40% of deposits are from Russians. So
Right.
it's not just going to be Cypriots. It's going to be Russians.
So essentially what they did originally that everybody balked at, they took between 6 and 9% of somebody's bank account.
Yep.
So if you woke up
A
one
one-time
morning,
tax.
One-time tax, but it wasn't a tax. They called it something else because that had to have another step, but people revolted and it didn't pass unanimously. So not only do you have Cypriots and all these
Can we just say Cyprusians?
Cyprusians being angering the Germans, and the Germans are angry because all of their money's being
Cypriot's like a bad fruit.
Right. That's exactly what I feel like. It's a rotting apricot. But it kind of is. It's the rotting fruit
of the Mediterranean.
Yeah.
Cyprusian. It just sounds cool.
So you've got the Russians are angry now. The Russians come out this week with China.
Yeah, what was that comment you made about Putin?
Okay, here's where I think a potential serious
and don't say
issue.
the H word. You're not allowed to say the H word yet.
Okay, I'm totally going to.
We're there
because you've got Russia.
No,
we're getting there.
No,
hold on.
I just mean
until millions of people die. You can't use the H word.
We're on radio, so let me finish. Can I finish?
No.
Can I finish? So what has happened is you've got the Germans mad, you've got the Russians mad, you've got the Chinese mad. This always turns out well for everyone. You've got troubling signs of confiscation of people's money in Cyprus, but it's a tiny country. So you know what? Everybody goes, hey, you just said it a minute ago. I'm not going to put my money in Cyprus then.
I was making a joke trying to assume that I had hundreds of thousands of dollars. You guys did not get it.
But here's the thing. This is an attitude that the United States is a part of it because we fund the IMF. The IMF, we lead the IMF.
The Fed funds the IMF.
Right, but we are part of the leadership of the IMF, and we have helped craft this deal. This is something that is not going to stop with Cyprus. It's a troubling sign. China and Russia are making moves consistently over the last year and a half that they are trying to create a world where the United States does not exist and mutually work together to ensure, let's say, self-preservation, but let's also say world domination. Really,
no.
You don't think that Putin is the type of guy who looks like the next great dictator?
Bears barebacked.
Exactly.
I mean, come on. No, but I will agree that I think there is a legitimate move on the part of world powers to get the dollar out of being the reserve currency and get and basically make the United States not be the standard financial bearer of basically world economy.
Mm-hmm. Right.
That's been going on for a while, but I have seen a huge uptick in that.
That would have never gone around if we hadn't done quantitative easing. Oh. And you can make the case that all the United States government's done with quantitative easing, all they've done is a tax on U.S. savings for every depositor.
Right. So
every time the Fed does something, it's quantitative.
So
I agree, but that, in theory...
But I mean,
it holds up.
Let's not assume that just because they called it quantitative easing that it wasn't that world governments weren't already looking at it like with bullcrap. I mean, once the Fed finally gets audited, which is going to happen eventually, I mean, they're going to find out about stuff that they've been doing for decades. That it's like, why didn't China do this earlier? They would be
all right. So the Russians and the Chinese have consistently been gathering various minerals and mineral rights, and they have sent ships up to claim oil rights up in the Antarctic. They've been hoarding gold like crazy, and you know, we see Europe on a dangerous path that could absolutely destroy the American economy because we have become the world's banker and we have financialized everything. That's our export is ideas and money.
As long as China can still make stuff,
right,
we'll be okay.
Well, what happens when China realizes that they have a middle class? So here's what happens
when China calls on their debt?
Right. So
that's the $17 trillion.
Then we stop
question.
buying their exports and we both collapse. We're intertwined.
The $17 trillion question is when China starts calling on their debts. What is Washington?
So what happens when Europe collapses? Europe goes looking for a strong man. What happens when Russia steps up because they have the resources? And you can't tell me that Putin is not the next great dictator. Did you see that his number one vocal opposition, this Russian oligarch, ended up dead in a hotel room in Europe this weekend? I mean, this guy is dangerous, and I think he's more everybody fears the Chinese, but I think it's Putin is a serious problem.
He though, the thing is, Russia isn't strong as a country anymore like it used to be. They're poor. They are struggling with alcoholism. They have huge gambling problems. They are a mess internally.
But
so
Russian
it's
mob.
not there yet. It's not there yet. But
China
he embodies dictator.
And China has incredible problems with. I mean, they're where we were at in the 1880s. They're on the verge of an industrial revolution, and I think you're going to see major civil unrest.
And on top of that, they're actually older than we are as a society. People got to remember, China has to get rich before they get old. If they get old before they get rich, they're going to be.
Stops. Tell us that fact that you told us before we started the show.
Oh yeah, China. They did a little analysis, and in the last 40 years, since they've done the one-child policy, they have killed 330 million Chinese, the size of the United States, in 40 years. Wow. And that doesn't count women born
Aren't there more
alive that they end up,
Aren't there more people in their army than there are in the United States in total?
Mm-hmm.
So,
but we got bigger battleships.
So we have just had the most depressing show ever, and I think there are a lot of things out there.
Let's not forget North Korea. They wanted to blow us up.
North Korea. Give me a break.
Dennis Rodman is over there consulting with that guy.
I just think there are a lot of factors that, when it comes down to it, we're in a period where we're playing a very serious game and we're on the edge, and we could go over the edge or we could not go over the edge.
Well, if history proves anything, then we will go over the edge.
We're screwed.
Yeah, we're screwed. I don't know. There's so much stuff getting set up right now that is on one hand reminiscent of prior to World War I and World War II, and there are so many things that are new coming along, and there are world powers coming up, and there is just a shifting of basically the balance of power. The United States is losing its stance as far as the most powerful nation in the world, and these other countries are fighting over who's going to take it. The European Union is financial collapse, and it's going to be taken over by somebody. Somebody's going to try and convert that into some sort of governmental system that is under the control of one of them rather than a quasi-confederacy as they are now. I mean, it is really set up to basically... there is going to be something that comes along that just throws a match on the brush that is what's going on overseas right now, and it's going to be huge.
I hate to mention this, but I think he could be right. Glenn Beck said that
you're off the podcast, man. You're not pure anymore.
The Archduke Ferdinand moment may have been when the Tunisian lit himself on fire in the fruit stand, and that's what lit the Arab Spring. But you've heard of the Arab Spring?
Oh yes.
See, I actually think it was something different with the Arab Spring as part of it, especially in Egypt.
I think it was Twitter.
When we started quantitative easing, we're the world's reserve currency, and it ended up causing food prices to skyrocket in Egypt. And so the lower classes there were rioting not because of Morsi. They were rioting because they couldn't get food, they couldn't get fuel, anything like that. It was basic essentials. Everything, in my opinion, can ultimately be tied back to an economic decision.
Everything Hitler, in any kind of war can be turned back to
Godwin's law has been invoked.
Yeah, you can't use the H word,
I'm going to say Hitler, because if they don't do the Treaty of Versailles, and the price of gold after Bretton Woods screwed everything up because we mispriced it, you never have Hitler rise, ever.
And
Bretton Woods was after World War II.
And people think that Hitler... Hitler was the...
Yeah. Are you talking about the mark?
Yeah.
Okay.
Hitler was in power for, 8 years before he started World War II, and people just sort of went along and they accepted, a lot before it finally got to a place where it just had gone too far.
Yeah, when he invaded Poland.
Right. But before that, we had the freaking Olympic Games in Berlin, for God's sake. He wasn't always a monster. It just was like, well, that's Germany.
He was always a monster.
He was always a monster, but hey, that's Germany, man. That's not us. We're not going to be a part of it.
You could blame Joe Kennedy for a lot of that.
I could strangle that art school director, admissions director that didn't let him in. The course of human history.
Right?
There's something on Reddit. It's like, did you like this picture?
He wasn't even German, was he? He was
also the chick that totally distant too,
his
right?
cousin.
So he had the woman that he loved, and he couldn't get into art school.
His cousin.
Yeah.
He wasn't even German. He was Austrian, right?
Yep.
And his mother had Jewish, blue Jewish blood, 1/8 Jewish.
All right. Well, we totally descended into Godwin's Wild.
Yeah.
So let's start with Lynn. Let's start with Lynn and go around on a little round table, and then we got to kind of wrap up soon.
No, we don't.
All right.
The game doesn't start for another hour.
All right.
Is it not for another hour?
No, it's 9:30. So
we can keep going.
When you Hitler. So we've just. And I think it's your fault, Lynn. We've just had the most depressing show. The most depressing show in our history, where we are wallowing in...
No.
And we're just getting interesting.
All right,
It is just getting interesting.
The most depressing show in our history was when Senor Gold left.
So when...
What beer are you on, by the way?
3.
Yeah.
Only 3?
I'm
talking. I am talking.
I'm totally in character.
That's true. Drunk redneck.
I'm not drunk. I'm not even buzzed.
What can we do to change the world? If you are listening to this podcast and all of these things are happening on a global scale, what can we do to try and make the world a better place.
Oh my word!
Yeah, I know. It's pretty deep.
It's like a Miss America pageant.
Welcome to the pod.
Right?
Welcome to We Are
Thank you,
Libertarians,
yeah.
Lynn. This is where we ask the big questions.
Oh my!
You want Greg to go?
Yeah, let Greg
All right,
go.
let Greg go.
I'm only going to cover the 2 topics we talked about this week. With gay marriage, I think what's going to happen is they're going to find all 3 specifics of the law invalid. It's going to be a substantive argument, and so it's going to go right back to the states. We're right back at federalism. 31 states have banned gay marriage in their constitution. 9 support it, I believe, and then the other 10, it's somewhere in between. So you go back, and I literally, when that decision is ruled, I want there to be 2 bills sitting outside the Supreme Court with bipartisan support for civil unions. I want it to be ready to go. So no matter how that is done, how it's ruled, they take it right up to the steps of the House of Congress, get that passed, send it to the Senate, get it done. It is time. I mean, it is crazy. I mean, just to me, crazy that they can't get married.
So, how can someone listening, though, to the original question here, how can somebody change the world listening to the podcast? All these things that we're not in control of, what can you do to kind of help keep us from all that stuff happening?
Rand Paul
If you're an
2016.
I knew you were going to say that. He's got a raging rander over here.
He does. Call your congressman. Talk to your friends.
No. I'm going to stop you there. Don't just call your congressman, because
Show up at his house.
Call out your congressman for being a bigot.
Get involved. I mean, a lot of us listen to this podcast. God, just stop just sitting around listening to stuff and arguing on the internet and get up and go
Hey,
do something.
We're trying to build a business over here.
You can listen.
Shut
No,
it.
you can listen to us. I mean, just get out of your armchair. Be more than an armchair activist, a keyboard revolutionary. Go out there and actually do stuff, man. You want to ask how you change the world? It's one person at a time.
Mine is share this episode of We Are Libertarians
I cut Greg off.
on Facebook.
I cut Greg off. Greg
he's
gets to
done.
finish his thought.
So
I had one thing on how to fix Cyprus because the
All right, go
model's
ahead.
already there. Iceland just said, screw the world.
right.
Iceland said, nope, no creditors. We're done. We're going to get our own currency back. We're going to devalue the crap out of it. Economy came back. The international foreign markets came back to borrow money. They're doing well.
Right.
That's all Cyprus has to do. They just have to say, we don't want to be a part of the euro. Euro breaks up. Every country goes back to their own currencies. It's not a perfect solution. You don't have massive growth, but you're out of the woods. That's why the U.S. can't have a debt crisis.
Yeah, I think the way to make the world a better place, and we'll talk about what these young Ron Paul kids are doing in just a minute and talk about the YL convention. Mine is know this stuff. Mm-hmm. You know, read the news every day. Greg does a great job of keeping everybody informed. We try on our Twitter feed to just keep you informed on stories of what you need to know. Read the Daily Libertarian.
What is it?
Not just the Daily Libertarian. You know, just pay attention to the news, but go a step further than that and understand history. Pick up, you know, we'll have to put together.
Read a book.
Read a book, it's stupid. Or listen
There's
to
still
Audible.
books.
They make those.
I think what we
Right?
ought to do is we ought to put together a little reading list for people. So if they want to, you know, learn about history and maybe some books, so help us out. Send suggestions of books that have really helped you understand history. Send it to spangle@wearelibertarians.com or tweet or Facebook us with it. And I think you just have to stay educated and you have to go out there and you have to explain it.
You have to do stuff.
Right. So
You have to
Well,
do
I
stuff.
think talking is doing though, because I have a lot of people, at least in my
That's
circles,
right.
that would rather just stick their head in the sand, not talk, not offend anyone, not learn. They don't
Right.
want to change their views. They don't even half of them don't even want to know everything that's out there because it's not comfortable.
We Are Libertarians listeners. This
Of course,
is my
they're not.
advice.
They're different though.
No, but I'm speaking to the We Are Libertarians audience. This is my advice to you. Grow a pair of nuts. Go out there and actually affect change.
But you know what? We're talking about stuff and we're tweeting about stuff, and we just decided, hey, we like to talk, we like to analyze the news. Let's see what we can do to kind of help people understand what's going on in the news. So we started the podcast. Start a podcast.
if you're outspoken on one issue, go join some advocacy group that goes door to door and tries to promote that. Do something other than argue on Facebook. That's my biggest thing. Is we have, for every one person who has these ideas and actually does something about it, we have 90 people that sit on Facebook and argue about it and argue over who's the purist, over who does this, over what the perfect world. Just go out there and do stuff.
Even if you can't donate the time, scrounge up like 10, 20, 30, 40, $100,000 a month and give it to some organization that you think is worthwhile. Because if you can't...
Americans. Liberty.
We have a donate button on We Are Libertarians. No, just kidding.
Hint, hint.
No, find an organization, because if you can't give the time and you don't feel you have the talent, then give money, because they'll hire people who do have the time and do have the talent to do the work for you that you think needs to be done. What are some other ways that people can make a difference in the world, Lynn?
Oh my, other than what's already been said.
I think what we should do.
Creighton has a suggestion for you.
I think what we should do to save the world is.
Oh my, this isn't looking. This isn't.
What we should
really, please go to the YouTube channel. We're roughly 120 minutes in.
We should pull an Adrian Veidt from The Watchmen.
Hey man,
and create.
Do you know what would be awesome?
An alien, and have it attack Earth. That way everyone unites against it.
That's a good plan. Paul Krugman.
Have you ever read The Watchmen? Have you ever read The Watchmen?
No.
Oh my God.
Or maybe we could be like Cartman.
I'm sorry. And I have to mention this. We are Libertarians listeners. You are listening to two individuals who have lost out on life, okay? They haven't seen Star Wars since they were like 20 years ago, man.
What is this?
This is atrocious. You understand that, a lot of what they say is okay. Don't get me wrong. But you better raise an eyebrow at anything they ever say, because they haven't seen Star Wars since they were like 6 years old.
It's
Two
true.
words. Bill Shatner. Drops the mic.
Star Trek.
He just dropped the
Bill
mic.
Shatner and his toupee couldn't hold a candle to Darth Vader, the Emperor,
It is
Luke
true.
No. We're not glancing over this, all right? I've been waiting for a while to say something about this. I cannot believe this.
It is true.
You guys aren't even American. You're Canadian. You might as well be Canadian. You might
I
as well
will come
be
over there
Canadian.
and I will beat you with your beer.
You're Canadian. Who doesn't see Star Wars?
I eat French fries
You're
with
older
ketchup,
than I am.
sir.
You guys are older than I am.
It is
and I've
true.
seen it more than you guys. That doesn't even make sense.
I am
You've
the
had
world's
more time.
worst libertarian. I've never
It
fired
has
a
nothing
gun.
to do. You're a bad human.
Wow.
That's
last
right.
time-
I went there.
The last time I saw Star Wars, I was roughly 6 years old.
Oh my
I watched
God.
the 3 installments. I've never seen the new 3.
Are you
and I
serious?
certainly have not
See,
seen any of those little
I
animated
watched
movies.
the old ones when the new ones came out, just to be like, hey, I need
and
to.
it changed your freaking life, didn't it?
I don't know about that. But,
Oh, it did. She wanted it.
Listen, they're all right, but they're not the Matrix.
The
You
Matrix,
know,
only the first one was
they
good. Come
actually-
on.
Ladies and gentlemen, that was verbal trolling.
They actually have places where they put people like you and they string you up for the townsfolk to see.
FEMA camps.
This person
Whatever,
thinks
y'all.
the Matrix is better than Star Wars.
That's my second troll in 30 seconds, man.
You guys, I don't know, man.
I have moved them to the top of the Netflix queue. I will watch them.
You live next to a mall. Go buy them.
I'm not gonna
There are
right
a lot
now.
of stores. Like
Yeah, wait till Christmas time.
They cost like $10 on DVD. Get one.
I just don't
It's the
care
best.
that much.
I'm
$10
guessing you probably own them. Why don't you just bring them?
because I have them on Blu-ray.
He watches them
You
every
don't have
night.
a Blu-ray player?
I do, up there. Yeah.
Oh,
I'm an American.
you should have told me that. I might have brought it.
I love the
Although the IU game is on tonight.
the nationalism on this show has become fantastic because there was I think it was the second or third episode when I was on, and I was trying to defend nationalism. You guys were like, "What do you mean? There's cultural norms for America, and those are worth holding on to." Now it's I hate Canada.
Spam.
Listen,
Yeah.
I have some serious groundbreaking news.
This isn't
that I will
national.
share
Oh,
with
yeah.
the listeners in a
This
little
isn't
bit.
nationalism that I'm talking about. This is worldism.
Because I had
If you live on Earth, then Star Wars is a virtue.
I guess
It is the golden mean.
I had an epic nationalist moment in Las Vegas this last week. Like, I was starting to come around to your guys, like, oh yeah, well, open borders, that's a great thing. Oh no, these two men of many years ago, Spanish origin.
Were they from out of town?
They were from out of town,
Like
and they were
Spanish origin?
like their great ancestors used to live in Spain, and they no longer do. They were behind me and a buddy in line, and my buddy had on his IU candy striped pants, and he started talking about like how stupid Americans were. And I just about invaded and had my W moment.
These
and was
colors
like,
don't run.
Oh yeah, and I was like, I am done with open borders. I am Bush doctrine. Sign me up.
I don't know. I have to admit that I did. See, I spent a year in France as an exchange student to get out of my house.
You're never
in
coming back.
2002.
Oh.
I actually there were like rallies like against Americans and stuff in
Like-
this little city where I was. I told people I was Canadian.
That
I
was
like, yeah,
freedom.
I'm Canadian. Absolutely. No, it was dangerous.
Separate couch.
I'm just going to turn off her mic. You don't come into my home and admit that you ever admitted being a Canadian. Do you not understand the menace of the Great White North and the danger that they pose to this nation? 98% of Canadian citizens live on the border above America. And I would like to mention something else. I was going to save this for my roundtable bit, but I have found some disturbing news out about someone that I had mentioned that I was starting to like, but we needed to keep an eye on them. I have discovered that Senator Ted Cruz from Texas was born in Canada.
Dun dun dun.
Let's just let that sink in. I'm sorry.
No one has the Constitution memorized that well. Unless you're a plant.
That's exactly right.
No one. No, and
one.
Creighton's in the bathroom.
And just
his
open the
Rand boner got a little out of control. Had to go
Just
fix
open
some
the
things.
door. Open the door.
But thank God though that's done, because if he gets a Rand Cruz boner,
I'm
things are
just
going to get
telling
out of
you,
hand.
somebody who is that in love with the Constitution, they're
I know.
over-exaggerating a little bit.
It's a modern day The Americans on FX. Only Ted Cruz is Kerry Russell.
Exactly.
I've got the preamble.
Into the mic, Creighton. Creighton's the world's worst broadcaster today.
I've got the preamble to the Declaration of Independence memorized. If you ever want me to read it off and show off, and
I'm just saying, I found out a bit of troubling news about Senator Ted Cruz, and he has been moved off of the watch list into enemy territory.
You know what?
You cannot be born in Calgary.
You're racist.
Yep, I hate white people.
He does. He hates people whiter than him.
That's right.
I didn't even know. I didn't really think about it, but that could be racism.
Let me tell you something. When I take power,
Technically.
gingers, watch out, because I'm coming for you.
Oh yeah.
The only people, gingers, you're in trouble. The only people whiter than me. So
I'm just saying, anybody who has the Constitution memorized,
It's a plant.
no.
we've officially given this show
No.
up. We were like having some really deep intellectual discussions, and then,
And then
now it's
and
just
then I
like,
remember that you guys
Canada
haven't
hating.
seen Star Wars.
I haven't seen Star Wars.
You don't know. That's so sad. That's so sad,
man.
No, man, that really.
I feel
that's
bad for
like
you.
that.
It's your cat.
What is my cat doing? Oh, let me tell you. Mittens.
She opened a door.
Mittens.
That's
Listen,
evolution
Mittens
in real time.
understands where
Cats will take over this world.
she
man.
knows where the treats are
Egyptians
at.
knew what was going on.
The treats are on the top shelf of that cabinet, so Mittens will jump up on the counter. She knows she's not allowed on the counters, but guess what? She doesn't give a crap. She jumps up on the counter
Get off the counter.
and hops up there,
That stare.
opens the door, and oh wow, Mittens is not impressed with you.
Love the cat.
She could care less. So she opens that cabinet, will drag her treats out, and chew through the foil to get to her treats and eat the whole bag, and then she doesn't move the whole next day.
You know what?
It doesn't matter how high we put them. It doesn't matter where we hide them. She'll find the treats. What?
Don't hate on Ted Cruz for memorizing the
I'm just
Constitution.
saying,
No,
the man is from Canada.
come on.
Suspicious.
It's not suspicious. It's outright
Anyone
treason.
anyone who loves America should memorize the Declaration of Independence's opening. There, I said it.
I think that's required.
I'm a real American. I don't even know what the Declaration is.
That's fine.
'Cause that's
but-
what I
But
did.
the Constitution, I hope he doesn't recite the 3/5.
No, he memorized the whole thing, including the amendments.
Well, that could be problematic.
Exactly. What American knows how to do that?
The ones that are awesome.
Okay. All right, let's talk about Young Americans for Liberty, which is in no way affiliated with this podcast, right?
In
Creighton?
no way is that organization associated with this podcast.
So
in any way, shape, or
we've
form.
officially just given up on an hour-long podcast. We're now at an hour and a half of broadcasting.
So what I can do
So-
to finish this off is, if you want, I can recite the Declaration
No.
of Independence, and you can put like slow horns in the back.
No,
that
as we
build
go
up
through our
towards the
round
end.
table and wrap up the show, you're going to be playing the guitar.
I
Play a little
might.
tune.
I'll do it.
And so
I'll do the national anthem.
Let me tell you what I have noticed about the Young Americans for Liberty and the Students for Liberty kids that at those two conferences that
they're
I have gone
awesome.
to. Do I have to turn off your mic before you stop interrupting me, son?
No, you're talking about my group. Figured I'd talk about it too.
I have noticed that they are party agnostics. They'll work within the Republican Party, but they'll work within the Libertarian Party, or they'll work within both, or they'll work within none. And they really believe what Matt Kibbe said, that parties are empty vessels. And that is definitely different than older generations. The millennial generations of libertarians do not care about party. They care about one or two politicians, but they care about what politicians believe more than anything else.
How do you not listen to a guy who has mutton chops?
Listen, chops for change. Go
Chops
Matt
for
Kibbe.
change.
So we were sitting there and we were. I tweeted out that Matt Kibbe was legit because I was pretty impressed by Matt Kibbe, and Freedom Works retweeted me.
He's pretty cool. Yeah. Like, I got to talk with him at the Freedom Works Summit. He's a cool guy. He likes Rush.
You liked him a whole lot more when he had the same opinion as you.
He likes the dead.
I don't like people. Listen, I am at the age of 29 where I have stopped trying to understand why people believe what they believe. I've started trying to figure out why people don't agree with me. So that's something that you acquire with age.
Okay, but quick rundown of the Young Americans for Liberty
Yes,
Indiana
please.
State Convention, which is not affiliated with this podcast in any way, shape, or form. So what it was basically, it's called the state convention, but it was kind of a regional thing,
Right.
Just because they don't have. It's not like every state's having a convention. So there's 10 of them. We were the 4th, and we had a goal of 150 plus showed up. Good turnout. People from all across the country, really. I mean, I think. I won't say the country, the eastern part of the country. We had people from Pennsylvania come out, people from New Hampshire, most of them from Indiana, Ohio, Kentucky, stuff like that.
Right.
But it was just a great example of how strong everything still is. I mean, a lot of people would probably think that after Ron Paul's stuff was over that people would start dying off, but that isn't the case at all.
I think Ron Paul's name was mentioned maybe 2 or 3 times the only time Ron Paul was ever really mentioned was during introductions when people said they found the libertarian viewpoint through Ron Paul, and then later on when Matt Kibbe explained why Freedom Works didn't support Ron Paul. Everything else was total Rand Boner 2016.
Well, that's true, but
Justin, with a side of a mosh engorgement.
But I think it's important to note that these people that showed up were, the average age was probably 20.
About 24-ish.
No,
I was like the
people in their
grandfather in the room.
Yeah, there were a couple people in older years that bumped the average up.
There were some Tea Partiers there.
But for the most part, they were just college kids that on a Saturday during March Madness time decided that they'd rather go to Indianapolis, the most cosmopolitan city in the world, and sit in a hotel ballroom all day and listen to politics.
Right.
I mean, it really is pretty telling. I mean, I went to the Yale National Convention back in 2011. Or 2010, 2011, 2012. But 2011 was the first one that they tried to get big.
Right.
2010 was, there were probably
There was like 30 people in a room in Purdue.
Yeah, there was like 50.
Right.
There were like 50 people show up.
Let's not get crazy. It was not 50.
The 2011 National Convention was like, they tried to get 100, and they got probably 100 plus. I mean, that was the National Convention. That was in Washington, D.C. And that was only 2 years ago. I mean, it wasn't even 2 years. That was summer of 2011, and we have broke 100 on every state convention we've had so far. This movement is just getting huge. I mean, it's not slowing down at all.
Now, do you guys see what I see, that more people, I guess, our age or younger are getting more involved?
Yeah.
So you have either empathy or you have more involvement.
Oh, totally.
I mean, this is what I'm seeing.
To tell you the truth, I feel like, from my experience, which is totally biased and in its own echo chamber, I think old people are the ones that are apathetic.
Completely. And I will say, somebody even like Maya, who hates politics, loves politics and wants to be involved. And
That doesn't even make sense.
Hates parties, but supports parties. I mean, there's just...
Well, it's like you can be an agnostic or an atheist, but still like to talk religion and whatnot. Type of thing.
I think what has
to
happened...
like the philosophy of it.
You can be an atheist and like to talk about religion. I experienced
If you are in the Gen X movement, the
Kurt Cobain...
that was the... Exactly. That was the defining moment of the Gen X world, was the Kurt Cobain suicide. I'm just stereotyping here, but I'm just guessing.
That's true. I mean, Generation X was... Generation X and Generation Y was probably like the late 90s. And then the millennials...
The millennial generation...
They wore Led Zeppelin t-shirts and aviators.
Right.
Hey,
I love both, by the way.
I am a mishmash of all various
of
decades.
awesome.
I've got parted hair like the 40s. I've got aviators like the 70s. Led Zeppelin like the 70s. Blue jeans like from here till 1900. And
those shoes are from like the 1910s in the Dust Bowl era.
Like skater shoes.
No, they're not.
They're not even skater shoes.
These are cheap.
They look like the shoes that Charlie Chaplin ate in Gold Rush.
Skater shoes are comfortable, but they're not at the same time.
Thank you for recognizing my Charlie Chaplin.
I didn't even hear you, so...
I said they look like the shoes that Charlie Chaplin ate in Gold Rush.
Charlie Chaplin.
I'll explain it to you later, kid.
He was a great man.
I think the reason why our generation, by all measurements, the millennial generation, is more active politically, more aware politically...
Because we're unemployed.
More positive. It's... And also more apt to social change and working with nonprofits.
Because P. Diddy's out there saying vote or die, man.
Is because you have this giant defining moment of 9/11. Then right after that,
disagree.
you have the wars. You have
maybe.
As soon as the wars are is effectively over, you have the... I'm just moving on. You're just like the...
I'm so good at trolling you right now.
You are seriously like the Joy Behar of our show.
Trolling you so
like
hard.
The View. And then on top of that...
I will disagree with the 9/11 comment, but the rest I'm just...
How can you disagree with that?
Because 9/11 wasn't a defining moment for people like me. I was in 6th grade when that happened.
Well, I just don't understand how... Hannah's younger than you.
I was in the
civil
9th grade when it happened.
And then
the idea of being at war...
But then the financial collapse as well,
The financial
too.
collapse, what I said.
Right.
I think the financial situation right now is the defining moment politically for my generation, people my age.
It's frustrating. It's emotionally frustrating.
Yeah.
You want to go, why and what's
You're
going
only
on,
like
and...
6 years younger
yes,
than me.
but my point is that when 9/11 happened, I didn't even know what the heck was going on.
But Hannah Drazic is younger than you, and that was something that greatly impacted her. So maybe it's just a personal thing with you. I think
I think the idea of being in war maybe is something that's defining to us. We are a generation of war. Quick plug for a Young Americans Liberty National Activism event that's not affiliated with
totally
this podcast.
affiliated with this podcast.
But we are a generation of war. Since I was what, 11 years old? I'm 23 now. Since I was 11 years old,
right,
we have been involved in a conflict. We have been at war since I was 11.
But see, I turned 18.
Over half of my life.
I turned 18
been at war.
2 days after 9/11. So at 18, 9/11 was greatly traumatic for me. I mean, Greg,
you're
old.
I
was right behind you in school.
Turning your mic off.
You guys are old.
How old is he? 24?
He can't talk. I turned his mic off.
24, 23?
Yeah,
23.
23.
1990.
You know, I think that is
gross.
I think that's probably like 60% of it, but I think there's something that like no one even touches on. I bet everyone in this room had a parent that told them they could do whatever they wanted to be and could be president. Anybody else?
My parents are...
my teachers
I probably shouldn't say this.
Self-esteem and...
Right.
And I think that has
Rogers told me
that has created a generation of egoists. And I'm not saying it's an awful thing, because I think the millennial generation has that cockiness and able to get through some tough things because of that being built in. But every one of us thinks our opinions are so important that we got to get in the arena because, my God, people are going to flock to us.
Yeah, my mom.
The internet doesn't help
I would
that
agree.
either.
I agree, but I disagree.
Let the lady talk now. Go for it.
Well, no, just building what he was saying. I think the internet doesn't help that any. I mean,
Right.
the internet fosters that sort of.
Everybody can be a celebrity on Facebook and Instagram.
Yeah, when like the most important pop star of the era started because he was on YouTube.
Right.
Well, I think,
Justin Bieber, by the way.
I wondered.
You didn't have to say his name.
I know.
We knew who.
I'm so proud of my daughter. She's 6, and she goes, "Mommy, I don't like Justin Bieber." I'm like,
Good. That is a key.
She's going to become jaded and cynical just
need
like
to
you.
throw-
"Oh yeah,
you need
she's a
to-
mini me. She gets so bad."
You need to throw Led Zeppelin and Skinnerd into.
Well, see, my
whatever.
ex-husband is 39 going on 40, so he definitely plays
Wow.
all of the. Yeah, he plays all that for.
See, the thing
her.
is, I think one defining characteristic of the millennial generation is that we don't really have a defining characteristic as far as like some of the music
More individualistic.
Yeah, I mean music.
I think a defining characteristic of the millennial generation is that they sit around a podcast and talk about
That's
themselves.
true. That's true. But I think my friends, people that I know that are my age, that I kind of grew up with, for the most part, music wise, some generations are defined by music a lot.
Yeah.
I think that from what my experience, they like everything.
Right.
Movie wise, they like everything. I mean, there are of course the fads that come along and people get on board with and stuff like that. But I think one of the things that millennials have, it's like, in order to revolt against your parents, you have to accept everything that everyone's ever had. I mean, I listen to Cab Calloway.
But that's the thing about this generation, that the Gen Xers are squeezed between the baby boomers and the millennials, which are bigger than the baby boomers even now. And I find this at work. I work with a couple of baby boomers. They're in their 50s and 60s.
The enemy.
And I get along with them great. I don't get along with Gen Xers very well at all, really. And there's just something...
Because Hole was not a good band.
Because we have that close relationship with our parents, we get along with boomers in the workplace a little bit better than we do with other people. I mean, I have...
Now, a Gen Xer was someone who came of age in the 80s, right?
Yeah, it's
73 to like 87.
73 to
My
87.
dad's a Gen Xer.
It's... Yeah, I would say... What year was he born?
66.
No, he's a boomer.
No, yeah.
No, that's firm boomer territory.
Yeah, I agree.
Really, like 70s.
I thought boomer was somebody who came of age during, like, if you were a teen, like 18 in the 60s, you were a boomer.
No, it's 46 all the way up to like 60 something.
Into the mic, Greg.
I'm sorry.
No, I mean it's 1946 on to like I think like even 71 or 69.
Can we pick a different name than millennials?
Nah, it's kind of what we've picked. Gen Y didn't really work out well.
No. Gen Y is different. They're up before us.
No.
Yes, they are.
No.
Yes, they are.
They have decided that millennials, I would technically be a Gen Y.
Yes, you can look it up. Gen Y and millennials are two separate generations.
That's not true.
It's totally
Not true.
You can look that up.
I will look it up. With the trophy kids grow up. Can you go grab that book off my
It
shelf?
is because
I'll show
millennial
you.
is technically not a generation. There's Gen Y and Echo Boom. Millennial is just
Right.
a general identifier for people.
I just think we need to pick a better name. It's like a team name. You don't want to be named. What? The millennial's just a bad.
we haven't done anything worthy of earning a name yet, except for Facebook.
We need to be like the Norris Lee Schwarzenegger generation. Just like
the
three
Expendables 2 generation.
badasses named our generation.
The mem generation.
Yes.
Because no
You
one
and your
says
memes.
mem. No one. You're the only person that
I'm
says
not the
mem.
only person.
You are the only person who
Someone-
pronounces meme.
I have
as
one
mem.
person who writes meme MIM, and every time they do it, I laugh my behind.
Because they're probably making fun of you.
No, they're not making fun of me. They just don't know.
I'm sorry.
We troll Spangle a lot behind closed doors in the
because-
in the chat room. I feel bad for him some
It's because
days.
he hasn't seen
Am I?
Star
Is there
Wars.
a chat room that
He's
I don't
a closet
know about?
Canadian.
Another one we're all in together.
Oh yeah, I see the trolling. I don't mind.
He hasn't
you'll all
seen
get
Star
it.
Wars. He's a closet Canadian.
You
does-
mother.
We should. You know who we should troll more is Joe.
Joe really needs to
should
get
troll
trolled.
We just
more.
ignore him like
Joe,
he's
I know-
Marsha Brady.
I know
and we
you're
need
gonna-
to.
I know
we
you're
need to
watching,
troll
Joe.
him. Joe's I think Joe thinks he's Marsha Brady, but you are Or no, Jan Brady.
Joe thinks he's Jan Brady?
I think so, because we ignore him.
I thought Joe thought he was some Mason awesome guy.
Illuminatus.
That's where we need to wrap up. We're an hour 45 deep. So
This is getting
Cut
good.
this last part.
All right.
We got 30 minutes until the game starts. We can keep
no,
going.
it starts at 15 minutes. And
I thought it started at 9:45.
although Greg
does.
is working towards a buzz, he needs to be fully drunk. So basically what we do at the end of each show is if there's a point that you didn't get through on the show, or if there's something that people need to be aware of that we didn't cover, anything in the coming week that people ought to watch out for, this is your chance, your big moment to plug something, to talk about something you didn't get a chance to. And now, ladies and gentlemen, Lynn Patrick Swayze.
Lynn Patrick Swayze. Yeah, I don't have anything. Ooh, I did have a question, though.
Yeah. Okay.
Speaking of books.
This isn't an HR question, because we'll cover that after the show. Because no, there is no money here. That's the answer.
No job for you.
Go ahead. What is your question?
Do you care if I review some books?
No.
Along with all of my other posts that
Absolutely.
you're not posting. I'm like, it's done. I'll have like 100. I'm not doing a book review now.
The music
I can tell you what I'm reading, though.
for the wrap up
tell you
of
what
the
I'm
show is provided to you by Creighton, Muddy Waters, Harrington. The standing rule on the We Are Libertarians website is you can do whatever you want to do, with the exception of talking about conspiracy theories. We cover current events and talk about the libertarian movement whatever way we want. We just don't talk about conspiracy theories because
no aliens.
Even remotely close.
just because here's the thing. When it comes to conspiracy theories, it causes fistfights. And when we have fistfights, they would be in my apartment. And that's just not going
So
to
the whole
happen.
looking crazy thing is just like a side.
I don't even care about that. I just don't want... I've already had several things broken tonight, so I don't need more. So,
I'm sorry.
So, all right. So, yes, you may do book reviews, please. All right.
Oh, and with the whole iPhone Droid thing, like I have an iPhone, but I am total Droid. I only have this because my Droid cracked, and we traded this for a TV.
That's right. I'm telling you, you'll never go back, will you?
No, I will. The only thing I like about what I like
you're
about
not
it is that
coming
the apps
back.
work together.
You're
the
not-
apps work together because of the programming and the uniformity of it.
Yeah, because they're fascists.
Okay, I am reading the Declaration of Independence by Nick Gillespie. Very interesting so far.
All right, Greg, your ending point for the week?
I was just going to say,
Louder, like the more.
Lynn, thank you for being on. I thought you were fantastic. You were great. I love your articles. Nice meeting you in person. And then there are a couple things with this. Like, there are some things we didn't touch on with this case.
Right.
It is not like cut and dry. There is a possibility the Supreme Court could pass on it.
Yeah.
There's a possibility that the Justice Department, Obama, has enforced it, but he didn't want to defend it. That caused a big deal. And the people that were selected are called the BLAG. And they are what they do is represent the House of Representatives and appoint general counsel, and they are considered an injurious party by certain interpretations, so they could not rule at all. And then there are like a bunch of different ways this thing could turn out because there's three things to decide on. So don't watch. It's going to be interesting. It's going to be a modern day OJ, I think, in my opinion.
Yeah, and for my...
He's going to be the one that drives the white Bronco down the hill.
That's going to be Ginsburg. She likes to
Totally
party.
gonna be Ginsburg. Ginsburg already has the white Bronco lined up, ready to go.
And I think Thomas could split and surprise everybody.
I think that the Prop 8 decision will not get ruled on. I think they'll declare that it doesn't have standing. I think DOMA will go down.
How likely do you think it is that they'll just say that the Supreme Court doesn't have the authority to rule on Prop 8?
I'm not sure the Supreme Court has authority to hear this case.
That's what standing...
That's one of the possible outcomes.
Yeah.
Standing means that...
This at all.
Yeah, so DOMA, I think, is an issue of federalism, and I think that's the one. If they're going to rule, they'll rule on that one.
But both parties want the same outcome. The
Right.
exact same parties want the same outcome because the what's her name, Whitford, or what's her last name?
Not sure.
Windsor's attorney, they don't want to defend it by redefining it because if they redefine it, no matter how they do it, it's going to be exclusive. It's going to be excluding another class. It'll be excluding people who support polygamy. So they do not want to go that route. So this comes down to, do they have the rights? And if they don't have the rights, you don't want to redefine it, and the court doesn't want to be put in that position. I feel so bad for so many people that have their hopes tied up in this thing, 'cause I don't see it going well.
Yeah. All right,
Be the
Creighton,
defining be all end all
You're-
that people think it is at all.
your final thought for the week.
Oh, baby.
All right, well, that has been We Are Libertarians for this week. Thank you for joining us.
The 4 libertarian women are going to be calling him like crazy.
If you have made it this far in the episode,
Unmarried.
then God, you are a saint,
There's only
and
4
you
of them.
deserve a spot in heaven. All right, thank you so much for joining us, and as always,
Over yonder.
we promise to do better next week.
We do.
That's where my baby stays. I said the red house over yonder. It's where my baby stays. I got a bad feeling. All right, I'm good.
Music for We Are Libertarians is provided by Hoosier musician Brian Keith Wallen. Please check out his website, briankeithwallen.com. The song is Bad Spell. This podcast is produced by What is a Hoosier Productions.
Shit. God damn it, I forgot how to play it. I forgot how to play it.
That's like the musical equivalent of a chastity belt.